Welcome to the Rotoworld Basketball Show. It's Vaughn Dalzell alongside Raphielle Johnson of NBC Sports and Dan Titus of Yahoo Sports. We have a lot to cover because the NBA regular season open tonight finally is here. Feature the Nuggets and Suns victories over the Lakers and Warriors. And gentlemen, youth was victorious over old age, not once, but twice on opening night. But we do have some news on a veteran, James Harden, which is where we should probably start the show because, Raphielle, the beard is in the building. But that doesn't mean he's suiting up for Philly for their first game.
Yeah, he is not making the trip to Milwaukee for their season opener for Thursday night. Apparently, according to reports, he showed up ready to make the trip, and they're like, nah, player, you stay here. Continue to ramp up. Maybe they have a better idea of what he was doing while away from the team to get his conditioning right than we do since they're there, but nothing for Thursday, and I'm hearing you may not play on Saturday either. So that's at least two games that you will get an unfiltered version of DeAnthony Melton, so to speak. So it's already a fantasy favorite for a few years now. I think some of us may have been rooting for this Harden situation kind of drag on a bit longer just to give Melton those starters minutes, but I think Melton's going to be fine either way.
Yeah, Melton was definitely someone we talked about, and they were featured on our website, NBCSports.com, as a guy that's going to be top 100 fantasy status, depending on the Harden news. And Dan, I know you probably agree with that. What do you expect from him and maybe Tyrese Maxey too?
Yeah, I'd say Maxey's probably the one that's going to benefit the most here. He had a 12 assist game in the preseason. So I think there's a lot of upside here with Maxey really being a distributor and a facilitator, which we haven't really seen much of him. So I think it's great that we at least get 2 games at minimum for Tyrese Maxey to actually see what he can do as a point guard. Let's see on James Harden. I don't really know. Shams Charania said that it's going to be a couple games, but who really knows what's going on behind the scenes? So if you're a fantasy manager that roster James Harden, you probably love the value that you got him. But I would say that this saga is far from over.
Yeah, as we know, James Harden will probably stretch this out. I would say more than 2 games, especially if he's reconditioning. We made the joke last episode of I referred to him as Slim Thick Harden because he looked so great last year, was in shape. But I guess it's not that this season. But after Milwaukee and Toronto, they do have games against the Blazers, Raptors, Suns, and Wizards for taking on the Celtics. So some tough games in there the 76ers would like to have Harden in there for, but knowing him, he doesn't want to play for them. So we'll see what does happen. But we did see some basketball on the court. The Lakers and Nuggets played, and it was a pretty competitive game until midway through the fourth quarter for the Nuggets pulled away. It was ring night for them, so sentimental night. Nikola Jokic, triple-double, 3 3-pointers. He did everything you expected him to do. And I just want to point out that Anthony Davis, gentlemen, let me down in a big way. Started my season with a simple same-game parlay. Davis, 20-plus points. Chris Paul, 10-plus points. No sweat. Davis, 17 at half. 0 for 6 from the field after halftime. No points, gentlemen. So, Dan, what were some of your takeaways from the Lakers versus Nuggets?
First, that Anthony Davis wants no smoke with Nikola Jokic. I mean, 17 points in the first half, but he also did like nothing in terms of rebounding, blocking shots. He just didn't really seem overly aggressive outside of being getting aggressive on the offensive end. But like he just got completely shut down, missed 6 shots in the second half. So for him to have 17 in the first half and 0 in the second is not something that any better wants to see. But then also fantasy managers like, dude, wake up. LeBron, I think it's concerning that Darvin Ham has talked about him having a minutes cap around 20, 30 minutes. I'm not overly concerned by it because I think LeBron's still going to have, a high usage rate and he's still going to be an effective player on a permanent basis. But if he's not seeing 34 minutes, like that's definitely going to hurt his production a little bit. So something you need to be cognizant of. More so, I think I want to talk about Aaron Gordon and what he did. I think this guy was, he was going 111th in fantasy drafts. Last year, he was an all-star pre-all-star break. Like, he should have been on the list, but they had so many because the Nuggets were so good. But this guy is so underrated, man. And I think he doesn't need a lot of usage to be effective. And you saw it. He was playing from that dunker spot. He got, 6 assists. He gets the rebounds. He got the stocks, and he scored 15 points. So, like, this guy's just underrated, and I think he doesn't get enough credit in fantasy at all for what he can do for fantasy teams. And he's great depth right now. So it's definitely someone that I would be interested in trading for. And he's going to be pretty cheap because no one really cares about Aaron Gordon. So That was one of probably the highlights of the game for me was how well he looked.
He was a player in his career where he wasn't really living up to everyone's hype of what he could be outside of dunking the basketball and rebounding a little bit, but now he's kind of coming to his form. I feel like the postseason last year was really a springboard for Aaron Gordon to take the next step into his game, and he's been doing that. And I will note for the Lakers, we had 4 guys play more minutes than LeBron, but I felt like they were pretty deep, Raphael. I mean, you had Gabe Vincent playing 22 minutes, Cam Reddish got 18, Christian Wood and Rui both had 15. Jackson Hayes at 7 minutes was kind of surprising to me. I thought he'd get in the mix a little more there, especially in the second half. But what are your takeaways from Lakers versus Nuggets?
First and foremost, Denver seems to have a stranglehold on the LA-based teams. So that's non-fantasy point. I think fantasy-wise, Christian Wood, like he's a guy that he was like a lock to be a late-round pick in fantasy. I don't mind that because that at that point in drafts, that's a minimal gamble at worst, But the thing is, you look at his career, where has he put up numbers for teams that actually have playoff or championship ambitions? That hasn't happened. So I think there should have been some buyer beware for that reason. 15 minutes concerns me. He didn't check in until the start of the second quarter, and he shared the court with Jackson Hayes at that time. That changed after halftime. We didn't see Hayes again. If Wood is the unquestioned backup center and they can kind of use him to like absorb some of those minutes that they don't want to give LeBron, maybe he'll be okay as a late round guy, but I need to see a bit more from him before I hop on that bandwagon. And D'Angelo Russell, you talk about being snake bitten by the Nuggets. He was poor last night. They showed the video clip passed around on Twitter, LeBron telling him, "You give me the ball in the elbow, I can survey the court and find any of you guys open." Looks him off, takes a contested 3 that hits nothing but iron. That was kind of a microcosm. I feel like he's one of those guys where, non-fantasy point here, obviously, he wants to win, but as long as it's with that asterisk of the way that I want to do it. And I don't think that's going to work for this team, and it could negatively impact his fantasy value too. So I think Wood and Russell, the 2 guys I have my eye on moving forward these next couple of weeks from the Lakers standpoint.
Well, Ralph, Russell said he wanted to be more like Derek White. That didn't happen, is what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, he only got like 1 steal. Like Derek White would have probably 2 steals and a block there.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say like at least D'Lo gave you 7 assists. Like that, I guess that's one promising thing that he had. Like at least he was distributing the ball a little bit. But if you're actually watching the game outside of the box score, it looks a little bit concerning that this team not only looks a little bit old, it's super deep, which isn't good for any fantasy situation. But then also, the chemistry, the Nuggets blew them out of the water. Like the Nuggets are definitely the best team in the NBA right now. We're saying this without seeing one game, but like they look like they didn't have any hangover from that championship run. So that's just scary. They're just not on the Nuggets level. So Russell will probably be better when not playing against the Nuggets, but I see Raph's point in terms of like the bigger picture of how this Lakers team could be.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. And I thought late in that game, especially third and fourth quarter, D'Lo and a lot of Lakers, not that you wanted Anthony Davis have his ball in his hands that late after how ineffective he was, but I thought there were a lot of situations with pick and rolls or switches that they were missing the guys that they should be hitting there. And D'Lo was a big catalyst in that, in my opinion. But before we roll over into Warriors versus Suns, which I thought was equally as entertaining game, reminder for all you guys to look for the NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports, and you can find all the shows, including the Rotoworld Basketball Show that we're doing as I speak. So Suns versus Warriors, fantasy takeaways, guys. Devin Booker obviously had a night to remember, as he always usually does on opening night or big games. 32 points from him. Nurkic looked great. Andrew Wiggins didn't do much. Steph and Clay were 36 combined attempts. So Dan, I'll start with you. What did you like and what did you not like with the Suns and Warriors?
I think the Warriors are just missing Draymond Green. I think that was probably the most evident part of it. Their offense looks stagnant. Steph got in foul trouble. Clay is kind of just an offensive player right now. Doesn't really do much defensively. I don't know. I feel like it was a bad game for the Warriors. it wasn't a particularly good game for Kevin Durant either. He shot 32% from the field. Kind of settled for a lot of fadeaways and that mid range that just kept on coming short. So begs the question, like, is KD is he may not be the KD that we're expecting, like first round draft capital kind of guy. He did get 10 rebounds and 3 assists, so that kind of helped his fantasy day. But I don't know. I think there's going to be a long season for him. And this offense just looked like it was just so reliant on Devin Booker to get a bucket, and he delivered every single time. I'm curious to see how this Bradley Beal situation is going to end up, because it's pretty concerning to me that he's progressing in his back injury. So Devin Booker is going to be, top 10 player for the foreseeable future, as long as he has the ball in his hands as much as he did. He's dishing it out, found Nurkic. I think they have a really good relationship chemistry that's building there. And Josh Okogie, I'll let Raph talk about Josh Okogie, but that man seemed like he was everywhere all over the court. And the Warriors had no answer for his energy, which is concerning because the Warriors just look old. I wouldn't say they're Barkley like cooked, but they just look old out there.
Yeah, I think Okogie for me was one of the big fantasy winners last night. He, Contavious Caldwell-Pope, and then Taurean Prince. When you go back to that first game, those are the 3 guys that really stood out to me from a fantasy standpoint. Okogie was that 5th starter last year once Kevin Durant got healthy post-trade, and he's remained in that role. I think with Beal out, he may be the one who benefits the most. He's still rostered in under 15% of Yahoo leagues, so if you need a forward, you do a lot worse than Josh Okogie. Taurean Prince is in a similar spot, rostered percentage. Those two, and then my concern about the Warriors, I think Draymond will cure a lot of ills, but 2 concerns. Andrew Wiggins, 10 points, nothing else really. I think he had 1 rebound. Jonathan Kuminga was part of the closing lineup. We got early foul trouble, then he played well in the second half. So Draymond, you get him back, he'll help with the facilitation and the defense. Other thing, the Chris Paul fit. It's going to take time because, we've gotten so used to watching the Warriors play at a high tempo. Only 3 times in Chris Paul's last 10 years has he been on a team that's ranked in the top 10 in pace. So that's a huge deal when you're talking about mixing in a guy like that. And they've said they want Chris Paul to be Chris Paul. He's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. So you get it from that angle. But the adjustment may take a little longer than we may expect, given the difference in tempo that these 2, groups and individuals, prefer to play throughout the course of their careers.
Yeah, I think Chris Paul tried to fill Draymond Green's void as much as he could, especially with a stat line, 14 points, 9 assists, and 6 rebounds. It looks like a Draymond stat line, and the 4 out of 15 from the field, 0 of 6 from 3. I mean, Chris Paul had his worst statistical season of the last 2 years from 3. And he's going to be chucking more than ever, arguably, with the Golden State Warriors. So that's definitely something I think could be concerning. And I didn't bring him up to start because I have nightmares of what he did to me the other night. Not because I had him to score 10+ and he did that, gentlemen. What happened was I did a little $5, throw away McDonald's money on Chris Paul and Anthony Davis first basket. It was to win $4.98. And Chris Paul missed the first basket of the game. So, AD held me down, but Chris Paul didn't, and they reversed in the points prop. So I have hard feelings versus those 2 right now, but I do think Draymond Green should be the starter, Raph. Chris Paul should go to the bench. That's something I was wrong on weeks ago on our show. You agree now? You're still on that same segment?
Yeah, I think, the pace differences that I mentioned, I think he can be really helpful for Kuminga and Moses Moody. Both of those guys played well last night, but I think in that type of setting, they may have more of the offense catered to them as opposed to, when you have Curry and Clay out there, or at least one of those guys, because they're going to be high volume scorers, especially with that second unit. So I think a bench role may be best for Chris Paul. Will he accept it? We'll see.
Yeah, I think as long as he's a part of that closing lineup, I'm sure he'll probably be fine, and he probably will.
Yeah.
But I think you brought up the biggest point is, like, if Wiggins isn't checked in, this team's going to be in trouble, because like they need his energy, his rebounding. Kevon Looney didn't play his best game either. I just think it was a letdown game for the Warriors, but I think we'll see them bounce back. They'll still figure it out. Chris Paul did play well in his debut, but yeah, obviously they just had no answer for Devin Booker. And I don't know that many people will have an answer for Devin Booker this year.
Yeah, no, very true. Yeah, Warriors did their normal third quarter, come out on fire. Then after that, they kind of gave the lead. But when you live or die by the three, 10 of 43 will not get you the win even on your home court. So
Nope.
they'll look better long term. But right now, they looked all of their age, gentlemen. Don't mean to hate on the Warriors. But reminder, basketball season is here. If you haven't noticed so far, it's time to squeeze in your fancy drafts if you haven't got them already. Get the Rotoworld Basketball Draft Guide, which includes all the rankings, player outlooks, and projections you need to win your league. Just go to NBCsports.com, get your draft guide now. Use code preseason25 to save 25% off and receive a $10 Fanatics gift card. There are some injury stuff worth noting, injury notes, gentlemen. Short term, let's cover first. A couple bigger names like Darius Garland and Luka Doncic, questionable. Luka did participate in shoot around, so I expect him to go against the Spurs. And Victor Wembanyama on national TV. Ralph, what do you think of the injury news right now out of the guards or the big men around the NBA?
I think the two injuries that scare me are Doncic and Darius Garland. Garland's questionable, the hamstring. Those can be tricky. Calf injuries can be tricky as well. So I think those soft tissue injuries you're thinking about, all it takes is one misstep and you're out multiple weeks. So that would concern me. I think in the case of Garland, I don't know if there's anyone that you would pick up if you were to be sidelined for an extended period. Ty Jerome may see a bump in minutes, but I don't think that's enough to make him worth, rostering in most leagues. If anything, if you have Donovan Mitchell, you'd be in a good spot because his usage, which is already high, would skyrocket in that scenario. Luka Doncic may be a similar situation. Jaden Hardy's been upgraded to probable, dealing with an ankle sprain, but again, is he really going to get the minutes needed to be like a must-add player? I think if anything, maybe Josh Green for defensive purposes, even though he'll likely could already start, if anything, at the three as a small forward, then Kyrie's usage would jump up as well.
Dan, any opinions on who you think biggest winners or losers possibly with some of these injuries that are floating around for opening night for a lot of these teams?
So I think not necessarily for this week, but I would continue to monitor Jaden McDaniels of the Minnesota Timberwolves because he's out with a calf injury. As Raph was just describing, the calf injuries can be tricky. I think Kyle Anderson is a great person to pick up in the absence of Jaden McDaniels. He was awesome last year, got 4 triple doubles, gives you a mix of stocks and efficiency as well. He's got the most boring and slow game you could possibly imagine in the NBA, but this dude is useful for fantasy purposes. So they don't have the best schedule this week. So that's why I'm saying, like, you're probably not going to be able to fit him into your lineup tonight or on Friday because those are the biggest slates. But if this lingers into next week, I think you have a really good pickup right there on your hands with Kyle Anderson. The other one I would monitor is I'm actually not as worried about Darius Garland. I was just kind of looking around to see, if he's a go. It seems like he was all systems go for shoot around. So I think he should be all right. But, as Raph said, I think Donovan Mitchell would probably benefit the most. But Jarrett Allen is still out. So I would expect Evan Mobley to be very good early on in this season as well. If you're looking for a streamer, maybe you want to throw in a Max Strus probably Max Strus would probably benefit the most there. I think they'll run smaller. He'll get more opportunities on the wing there. But yeah, there's not too many injuries to start the season, so I'm pretty excited to get started here. But I don't know, this Luka situation is definitely a bit murky because he had such a high usage over the course of the summer. Like, this dude was never stopped playing ball, which is what you always wanted to see from Luka. It's like, hey, can we get like a slim down in shape version of Luka? And now that you get it, he hurts his calf. So I think he's probably just playing it safe. I think we'll see him out there tonight. Given the new protocols around nationally televised games and injury reporting and such, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Luka out there, if only for, maybe he gets a little bit less minutes depending on how the game goes. But I wouldn't be too concerned about Luka or Darius going into tonight.
It sounds like Luka might be getting the LeBron treatment at 29 minutes cap there.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there any guys? I know you guys named a lot of players here. Raph, I'll start with you. But is, like, for daily fantasy, people using, captain spots or the spots that get more points in general, what's a guy you'd be looking at?
I think it's Donovan Mitchell, as I mentioned earlier. I think he's one. Even if Garland's available, I think he's going to be ready to have a huge season individually. Dan mentioned Evan Mobley. He's someone else just because he's the only big on the floor to start the season. I think that's going to benefit him immensely. And I think Cleveland's going to ultimately move better with just one big on the floor instead of two. Like, they didn't really have too many issues during the regular season, but obviously we saw things bogged down against the Knicks. Mobley's offensive skill set is such that if you have one of those high profile spots in DFS, he could really be valuable for you because of the scoring, the rebounding, and the block shots.
Is playing two centers on the floor at the same time never seemed like something that was going to work this day in NBA. We keep joking about, but I think both those guys are awesome. I like Mobley over Allen in general. Dan, who do you like if you were getting a captain here in daily fantasy?
I like Trae Young. I think he's going to absolutely torch the Charlotte Hornets tonight. I mean, the Charlotte Hornets don't play any defense. They play with a lot of pace. I think Quinn Snyder is a guy that's got this team. I mean, there's still we're still trying to figure out the rotation, whether it's Sadiq Bey, Jalen Johnson, and that whole power forward situation. But I think one thing that's going to be consistent is that Trae Young's going to have the ball in his hands a lot, and he's going to go off on this team. So it's going to be a fun game. That's actually one of the better games on the slate in terms of fantasy production. The other team I would probably look at, I know it's going to be ugly, Vaughn, but I feel like Nikola Vucevic might have a good game against the Oklahoma City Thunder. He's a big man. The front court of the Oklahoma City Thunder is a bit weak. I think he can exploit that. I think there should be some easy rebounds to be had there. He's one of the biggest guys on the court, being near the rim. I think there's just an easy way to get some rebounds, some blocks, and I think he should actually score a considerable amount too. So I don't usually advocate for Nikola Vucevic, but I think that this matchup seems like it's a good one for him. I think he could dominate Chet Holmgren there.
Well, you wouldn't be here or have a job if you were advocating for him very often, Dan. But no, I think he has a pretty good matchup. I think that's going to be a higher scoring game than probably people think. I'm excited to see what the Thunder look like in general more than the Bulls, especially the younger players like Chet Holmgren there. But a lot of good players. Trae Young's points prop against Hornets is 26.5.
I know why. Because they don't play no damn defense.
It should be more than that.
It probably should. I could say 28-11 or something like that, man. He's going to go off.
Yeah, if this is week 3 or 4 of the NBA season, I think Trae Young's going to have a much higher line than that. Exciting games a lot, but we have some more injuries to talk about as well as scheduling aspects right after this. So Sunday night football on NBC. I cannot wait because it's the Bears versus the Chargers. But really, it's DJ Moore and the Bears. They go to Southern California to battle Herbert and the Chargers. The kickoff starts at 7 p.m. Eastern for coverage only on NBC and Peacock. And, Fields may not be the quarterback for Chicago. They got a D2 guy in there who played in the PSAC. Which way do I got to go? Go here if you're watching live. Right there. That guy played in the PSAC. And now he's the quarterback for the Bears. Pretty crazy. But as far as long-term injuries in the NBA, Steven Adams, once again, biting the bullet. He's out for a while, out for the season. A couple other guys like Bojan Bogdanovic and Tari Eason also showing up for 2 to 4 weeks. Raph, where do you want to start with long-term injuries and how it affects some fantasy guys?
I think we have to start with Steven Adams. They tried the non-surgery route, but as we saw with Paul Pogba in the other version of football, didn't work out. Ultimately, they decided Adams had to go under the knife to repair that PCL tear. Out for the season. Xavier Tillman time. That's basically what it is. We've seen in the past that Jaren Jackson Jr. plays best when next to a more rugged big man. Tillman can fill that role as he did last season. I thought Santi Aldama could have been that guy. I think he's still someone that fantasy managers are going to want to look to pick up, but he's out on Wednesday. So he can't help you right now, but that's someone that if you have an IL plus spot, maybe you pick him up and stash him there for a little bit, see how long he's going to be sidelined for. But if you need immediate help, Xavier Tillman's going to be that guy in Memphis.
Dan, what do you think about Xavier Tillman in general? He's not someone that would be on my radar in DFS, but it looks like Memphis is pretty thin when it comes to bigs right now.
Yeah, they're extremely thin. And I was actually team Aldama. Last year when Jaren Jackson Jr. was on the bench recovering from his meniscus tear, Aldama was the starter at power forward. He definitely gives them more range in terms of shooting and being a stretch 4. So I'd expect him to be in the rotation, but obviously he's got the ankle injury, so he's not going tonight. So I agree with Raph. I think he's a person that you could stash. I wouldn't be rushing to waivers to get him, but he was pretty effective in his 2 starts in the preseason, averaged 18.5 points, knock down over 2 threes. So I think he knows what he is. Xavier Tillman is a guy that's actually sneakily good at steals and assists. So I think he's a guy that you can plug in to your lineups right now and be effective if you want to get some low end steals and assists for a big man. One guy I would look at is Zaire Williams. I think that he's going to, now that he's going to be starting at the 3, he's been a guy that's been in that Memphis Grizzlies system for a couple of years now. He's on that trajectory of being a 3rd-year breakout. So this is a guy I would monitor. I don't really have any set expectations for him, but he's definitely someone I'm going to be watching now that the front court has gotten a little bit lighter for the Memphis Grizzlies.
I like the Memphis going through a lot right now with 3 or 4 players out to start the season. It's going to be a rough start, but they got Marcus Smart, so he's going to hold them down there in Grind City. Dan, I heard you're the guy to talk to when it comes to scheduling in the NBA. You're the guru with pickups.
Scheduling guru.
So if that is true, there are a lot of teams, with back-to-backs this week. There are a lot of teams with 2 or 3 games left over the next 6 to 7 days. So what are you looking at with scheduling?
Yeah, I wish my wife heard you say that because I can't schedule a damn thing in my real life. In terms of schedule, though, there's, I believe, 8 teams that play a back-to-back on Friday and Saturday, but there's only one team on Saturday, Sunday, and that team is the Sixers. So if you're looking at the schedule, obviously we're recording this on Wednesday. Don't want to give you any advice for tonight because it's not really actionable, but I would be looking ahead for any Sixers that are on waiver wires because they do play Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. So very interesting scheduling build, I guess, and the teams that they're playing against are definitely favorable. So I'll be looking for Paul Reed. Right now, he's around 55% roster, so he might be there in 10-team leagues. Kelly Oubre is a guy that I would probably look at. I think he's going to get into the rotation a bit, will be a good source of threes and steals. He appears to be motivated and hungry after kind of being disrespected for much of the offseason and not getting any contracts. Yeah, I think that's the main team that I would probably look to stream out the gates. Sacramento also has a pretty favorable schedule. They play against the Warriors and the Lakers on Sunday. Both of these teams, pace, plenty of fantasy implications there. May want to look at Malik Monk in a little revenge spot against the Lakers. Malik Monk is definitely a bucket off the bench. Sure. And then Phoenix, they play on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. So, they played yesterday and then Thursday and Saturday. So lighter slates. That's a Josh Okogie territory. So, yeah, I feel like those are the main teams. I think Philly's probably the best one that you can get the most bang for your buck in terms of streaming.
Yeah, I like their spots now because now I'm looking at their schedule, and obviously they got the big game Thursday against Milwaukee, and Saturday they got the Raptors at Toronto. Toronto's going to be on the second night of a back-to-back, and then Philly will come back home to play Portland, which everyone would probably seem like a smash spot because Portland's not supposed to be good, but ultimate letdown spot for the Sixers, in my opinion. So thank you for that, Dan. Hope James Harden comes back for Game 3 too, so that just boosts that betting line there. But as far as fantasy stuff for you, Raph, what do you think about a lot of the scheduling that Dan talked about? And there's anybody that you're picking up at streaming just because of scheduling?
Not so much that. I think I'm more in evaluation mode right now. Just because obviously we've only seen 4 teams play actual games, so it's kind of difficult to figure out too much. I think one team I'm looking at is the Heat. What's their backcourt rotation going to look like beyond Kyle Lowry and Tyler Hero? Josh Richardson is out Wednesday night, so there are going to be rotation minutes available. Jaime Jaquez, haven't heard a final report on him just yet, but he was dealing with an injury too. Drew Smith, I don't think you're going to roster or even stream Drew Smith, but we may see first half minutes from Drew Smith just because of how shorthanded they are. And also, Jimmy Butler, you talk about back-to-backs. He didn't play at all during the preseason. They've got a Friday, Saturday back-to-back. Does he play both of those games, or does he sit one of those out? It's weird. We also have to kind of take into consideration if games are on national TV too because of these rules they put together. So I think Miami, that's a team I would be watching Wednesday and then Thursday morning with those injury reports because they're already shorthanded. They could also be down a few more guys come the weekend because of, load management reasons.
Yeah, has a quote unquote easy game out the gate against the Pistons, who are young and definitely going to be hungry there. But they have a 3-game road trip against Boston, Minnesota, the back-to-backs, and then Milwaukee 2 days later. So I'm with you, Ralph. I don't think Jimmy Butler is going to play all 3 of those road games. That
Mhm.
sounds like a lot, but there's a lot of minutes to be going around there. So to wrap it up, really, Dan, what's a game coming up that you're looking forward to maybe the most, or when and why? And is there a player that piques your interest to why you like that game the most?
Yeah, the I have circled on my calendar the Houston Rockets and the Orlando Magic, which is not something that the casual fan would be like, "Oh yeah, let me go
That's a
watch
real fans
two
game.
bum teams." But from a fantasy perspective, I really want to see how Ime Udoka kind of rolls out this lineup we're here with Tari Eason out. Like, is Cam
Yeah.
Whitmore going to get more minutes? Is Dylan Brooks going to be 35-minute guy and the chucker that he normally is? But like, if he gets the minutes, I think there's a lane where he could actually be somewhat fantasy relevant in some deep leagues. But Amen Thompson is certainly a popular name that I think will gain point guard eligibility. That I'm really curious to see how they deploy him as like a 6-man behind Fred VanVleet and also Jalen Green. But then also on the Orlando side, man, there's just so much fantasy opportunities between Markel Fultz, Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero. I think it's just going to be a really fun game to watch of some young players and, a complete rebuild of this Houston Rockets team that I think will be way better this season. So I have Orlando Magic. I took their win total over. I think they're going to be at minimum 7th seed in the Eastern Conference. I don't know about the Houston Rockets, but I think they're going to be way better than last year. So I think it's one of the more underrated games on tonight's slate. So really excited for that. And probably player-wise, Alperen Şengün. I just want to see if Ime Udoka really uses him like a Domantas Sabonis, Nikola Jokic type of guy, because I think that's how the Rockets would be at their best is if they go through him.
Yeah, no, I definitely think it's going to be one of the most entertaining games. It's a real basketball fans game, in my opinion. I'm looking forward to what the Lakers do against the Suns after both those teams lost their first, or Suns won their first game, Lakers lost their first game. And the Lakers also have a big game after that against the Kings, Battle of California. Raph, what are you looking forward to the most for opening night for some of these teams?
I'm going to say the Lakers. And you mentioned that game against Sacramento. That's the first of a back-to-back for them because they play Orlando at home the following night, Monday, first day of week 2. With LeBron's minutes being managed and neither of those games being on national TV, does he sit one out? I think that's something to keep an eye on here because obviously 29, 30 minutes per game, as you mentioned earlier, Dan, he can certainly give you quality fantasy value in those minutes. But will there come a point where there's frustration and not playing as well as they want to, and the old man says, you know what, the hell with it, I'm going to put the team on my back. Now, that's not great in terms of him, 21st year in the league, but if you have him rostered, that could pay off in the short term.
Yeah, I think it does too. That's probably the most interesting thing to watch. I mean, I at least like that he has someone else that has some kind of youthful tendencies and seems to be a competent basketball player like Austin Reeves. But there's going to be a point in time if they get too many losses where LeBron's going to be like, all right, enough of this. Like, I need to win. It's go time. So as a fantasy manager, I probably feel pretty good about that, but it's definitely something to monitor, especially with these back-to-backs coming up. I don't anticipate him or Anthony Davis playing on most of these back-to-backs, especially when he's already getting that minutes cap out the gates that Darvin Ham's been pretty vocal about.
Yeah. I'd also like to mention Denver at Oklahoma City on Sunday. A lot of us are high on the Thunder. I'm not like 50 wins high. I think if everything breaks right, maybe they can approach that. But Sacramento won 48 as a 3 seed last season. And I think the West is just as deep this season. So that's going to be tough to do. But, you're a young team looking to establish yourself. What better way to set a marker than beating the reigning champs, the first week of the season? And SGA versus Nikola Jokic, that's going to be great in terms of fantasy basketball, watching what those guys do. Dan, what are your final thoughts before we head out of here?
Yeah, Friday night, I'm going to be looking at Miami versus Boston. I think that's going to be a great rematch of the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yes.
I was like, oh, wait, they lost in Game 7, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like this is going to be a heck of a spot. The Boston Celtics are at home. Yeah, they're going to want to enact revenge here. So I think Jimmy Butler, as you mentioned, that back-to-back, he's definitely going to play on that one. That one's going to be nationally televised. So I think that one's going to be, get your popcorn ready, because I think we're going to see a lot of what this Boston Celtics team looks like now that, KP is in the building and Jaylen Brown's got the enormous bag. This Boston team has a lot of expectations. So it would be funny to see if Miami, as undermanned and underfunded as they are and not having their best players play in the preseason, still gave them a run for their money. So we'll see what it do, but I think that's going to be a really exciting one for Friday night.
The Boston Celtics are my best bet for their opening night game on the road at the Knicks. They played twice in the preseason. So I'm pretty excited to see what Porzingis and the gang got going on at Madison Square Garden. But another great episode, guys. Before we get out of here, Raph, Dan, please plug what you got going on this next week, what the people should be tuning in to see. Raph, start with you.
Yeah, we're finally done with the preseason shenanigans. So now, we've got our daily pickups of the day column that comes out once games are over. We'll have a waiver wire column that Zach will be handling on Friday mornings. And yeah, the games are here. So I'm really excited to not just have to sit here and predict things, but we can actually talk about things that happen.
Yeah, and you can find me at Dan Titus on Twitter, X. And yeah, I'll be coming out with a weekly column called The Playlist, where it kind of infuses waiver pickups, the games that I'm going to be watching. I'll give you a little sample of what I listen to or what's in my rotation. So a little fun way to kind of go a little bit beyond basketball. But yeah, all things, find me at Yahoo Sports, Yahoo Fantasy app.
I love that. And if you like betting aspects, you could find me at NBCSports.com. But guys, would you believe me if I told you I was hitting 62% NFL and 64% in college football? Ooh. You wouldn't believe me, but I'm hitting 0% NBA so far, so you'd believe that. Right? But hey,
you got plenty of time to make that up.
Plenty of time to turn that around, baby. But yeah, great episode as always, guys. Make sure you follow all three of us. For Raphielle Johnson, Dan Titus, and Vaughn Dalzell, shout out to Adam Wise, our producer. Thank you guys so much for listening, watching. Make sure you subscribe and like to us. This was the Rotoworld Basketball Show. See you next time.